You are now tuned in to the Wisco Weekly Experience.
Mabuhay, bienvenidos, vitete, willkommen, and welcome to Wisco Weekly listeners and to the live audience that is in attendance. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Wisco Weekly. I'm your host, Dennis Wisco, and I have been waiting for this live recording, this episode for the last week or so. I literally could not sleep last night. It was like I was a little kid and it was Halloween the next day and I was so excited to wear my outfit. And that's what I feel about this episode today. Men, women, and children, you are in for a treat. With so many things going on in the world, I know that I've had several discussions, that I'm sure all of us have several discussions, personally and professionally, with people that have problems, and problems begetting problems, and problems compounding problems. And I was so excited to meet the guest that I have today because he is a world-class problem solver. And sometimes really what it takes to problem solve is just another way, just for someone else to tell you that, hey, I think you should be thinking about these problems just in a slightly different way. And that's all it really takes. So men, women, and children, on today's show, we have a global speaker, a TEDx speaker. He's taught at some of the best universities in the world: Columbia University, London Business School, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, Tel Aviv University. And he's here to share with us some tips and tricks about problem solving. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Erez Tsalik. Mr. Tsalik, how are you, sir?
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, sir, I appreciate you coming to us live from Tel Aviv, Israel. That's amazing. Thank God for technology these days. Otherwise, we couldn't get some of the magic that you're going to be sprinkling upon us on today's show. Mr. Tsalik, before we begin, how can people follow you?
I think the easiest way will be to follow my LinkedIn profile. That's Erez Tsalik on LinkedIn. And the SIT website. We'll mention that maybe a little later, but SIT is the company that I work for, and part of that magic, most of this magic is actually done as a team and not as individuals. So that'll be a good course.
Yeah, which makes the most sense. And by the way, for those of you that's joining us on this live recording, I hope you have a coffee in hand. This is going to be a conversation that can go very wide and very deep, so just sit back and relax. If you have a pen and notebook, that even helps. Because this is a live recording, if there is any kind of lost connection, just kind of forgive us, and I'll work through it. And if you do have questions, you can either type it in or raise your hand. And again, depending on how deep and wide we go, we may get to a point in the middle of the conversation that we do open it up for questions. But certainly towards the very end, if you have some questions that you would like to ask Mr. Tsalik, you're more than welcome to do so. So before, there is some additional content out there on you, Erez, in which people can get to know you in that sense. But I always find that the best way people can get to know my guests is just to simply talk and share with us some of your words and wisdom. So the company that you work for is Systematic Inventive Thinking. I think in order to lay the foundation of some of the problems that we're going to get to today, maybe you could describe for us what is SIT, and then we can at least have a baseline from here.
Happily. So SIT is one of the first companies in the world specializing in the field of innovation, more than 25 years, back when innovation was a term that you need to explain to others what it stands for. And SIT is also the name of the unique methodology that we develop and we're using alongside with other tools and models and systems in the field of creativity, innovation, and problem solving. So it's a small international company. With time and diversity, we were able to reach to more than 70 countries, more than 1,400 companies around the world. So the accumulated experience and knowledge is very, very useful. You understand in the world of innovation, you understand what sounds great and works great, what sounds great and doesn't really work so well, what are the business-related, industry-related, or culture-related differences between the way you apply innovation successfully in one part of the world or in one industry versus another. And more than anything else, it gives you an opportunity to continuously sharpen your skills and tools and abilities by collecting those insights.
And so you have two principles of SIT. Let's see, we have root cause and UDP.
Okay, so I thought I was mentioning these two approaches because we're going to talk today about problem solving, and I think that when it comes to problem solving, there are a few points that needs to be mentioned. One, we're not well trained to deal with problems. Most of the engineers in the world getting their certification without completing successfully problem solving training. So everybody learns the basics, fishbone and root cause analysis, and we all know that. But other than that, we don't have the right skill set to deal with the problems that we encounter every day in our work, and we rely only on our intuition, intelligence, and experience that in some cases could be very useful. But when you study solutions that perceived as not only good solutions, but also very creative or very innovative, you realize that they're actually counterintuitive. They're actually the opposite of what you bring with you to the room when you enter. So one thing that is important to take into consideration is that we need to have some good tools and techniques to apply when dealing with problems. Otherwise, our solutions will still stay in the context of common sense. The second thing is that culturally, we tend to confuse sometimes between observations and problems. We would say, for example, we have a problem. The company is losing market share. Now, for me, this is an observation. This is not a problem. I wouldn't know where to start from. But when you take a second look and you ask yourself, hold on, for a moment, I don't want to focus on the observation. I don't want to focus on the cause, and I'll explain why in a minute. I just want to focus on the damage, the negative consequences. Because if I can eliminate the negative outcomes, then I don't care about the problem. In other words, there are three good ways of solving a problem. The first way that we all do, again, intuitively, is identifying the cause and trying to eliminate it. This is what we call in the world of engineering root cause analysis. When you can do that, that's great. Do it. Many times, the cause of the problem is something that is either negative and positive at the same time, and you can't really get rid of it, or it's necessary, and you can't get rid of it. So root cause analysis in these cases will not be a very useful approach. At SAT, we use another approach, a very different approach, and it's important to say that it's not better or worse. It's just a different approach. That instead of focusing on the cause, we look at the negative consequences and we try to eliminate those. And we do that in a very systematic and disciplined manner. Originally, it comes from the world of trees, for those of you who are familiar with this originally Russian problem-solving technique. But after some adaptations to the SAT world, now it's something that can be learned within 20 minutes and apply within another 15 minutes. It's that simple. It's just a different way to create, or a more useful way to create what we call a new type of problem formulation.
So Erez, if I understand correctly, then and I'll use a sports metaphor here. So if I'm on a team and there is, we're on a string of losing 10 games in a row, and we could see that there are some chemistry problems. So there could be the root analysis that's, there's turmoil amongst the team, teammates aren't getting along, and so therefore if we could fix the chemistry, then we could play better together, we could win games. But one of the negative consequences, if I am playing together with this team and I'm let's say playing basketball, if we're missing a lot of shots, then that could be the negative consequence of the chemistry problem. So if we kind of just fix the negative consequence, the fact that I'm missing a lot of shots, that could in effect solve the problem. Is that a fairly simple?
That's a good example. Yes, absolutely. That's a good example.
Okay.
So I said earlier that there are three ways to solve a problem, and unfortunately, most of us only use one. Now, these three ways are equally good. And in the world of a problem solver, your worst nightmare is getting stuck. Your worst nightmare is feeling that you exhaust all possibilities and, there's nowhere to go. And the name of the game here is creating alternatives, creating more ways of attacking the problem. So if eliminating the cause doesn't work, then you have two other good ways to experiment with. So the first one, as I mentioned, is dealing with the cause. The second one is disconnecting the cause and the negative effect. Okay? So chemistry will still be bad among players, but it will not affect the score at the end of the game. Okay? And a third way to approach a problem is to actually reverse the relationships. You try to imagine a situation when, okay, it sounds really bad, I'm sorry, but I'm sticking to the analogy.
Okay.
The more dramatic and problematic the relationships between the players will get, the higher the score will get. Okay?
Okay.
Now, again, intuitively, we can't consider that. It doesn't feel right. But again, when you study ideas or solutions that are perceived by experts as innovative, you find these two phenomena happening all the time. Okay? Ignoring the cause, or maybe not ignoring, but leaving the cause as it is, but instead dealing with the consequences. And sometimes we have more influence or more control over the negative consequences versus the influencing the cause.
Okay.
So at SIT, what we do is we use all three approaches, which means, again, that we're open ourselves and the teams we work with to two new families of solutions that normally you would not even consider.
Okay. So so now we have a baseline here now. So let's actually address the first problem here. And so listeners and viewers, if you guys get the chance, this was actually a really good short video. It's about 11 minutes long, but again, Erez did this TEDx talk, and you can YouTube this, The Advantage of Thinking Inside the Box. And I think we're going to even get to this a little bit later, or maybe even sooner. All right, so here's the first problem that we're going to be dealing with. Small businesses have the opportunity to keep their business afloat by securing federal dollars under the Paycheck Protection Program. While these loans may be forgiven after a period of time, this also presents an opportunity for businesses to consider eliminating waste and inefficiencies. But in doing so, this may come at the expense of continued revenue loss, employee loss, and a slow path to recovery.